It was the Christmas morning of 2021, and my wife surprised me with something pretty great.
Oh wow! Fake vaccine cards! Now I can go out in public again. What? Whoa! A PS4!
I was so excited that I ventured out into the harsh, frigid Wisconsin winter to hunt for games at our local retro gaming store where I bagged myself a Fallout and a Horizon Zero Dawn, 2 games that would keep me fed for months. I already knew what I was going to get with Fallout 4, so I decided to check out Horizon first because I had never played it, and I dove in anticipating a fresh, new, exciting gaming experience that was going to blow me away. So that's what I did for the rest of the day and into the early evening. But after 5 hours, I just wasn't having any fun with it. And I was hit with this crushing feeling like, am I just bored with gaming? I've played this a million times before. That's when it just sort of dawned on me that a lot of these newer AAA games are just all kind of the same. They found a winning formula, and now every company just runs with it. So it's just kind of the same thing over and over again. But also, I'm in my 40s, so this could just be a case of me experiencing the olds where I'm just like, I've seen it all before. They don't make them like they used to. Old people shit. The kind of shit old people complain about. And so now sitting there in the unsatisfying glow of Horizon, I had a thought that never occurs to most gamers out there.
Well, I guess I'll just go have sex with my wife.
So imagine having sex on Christmas instead of playing video games. So yeah, obviously that's a huge win for my wife, but it's pretty devastating for gaming. And while I'm laying there, I'm thinking, I need something new. Or maybe not something new, but something different. And I've always had it in the back of my mind that one day I was going to play through every single retro computer game that was ever made. Systematically, alphabetically, by year, every single one of them. And I thought, you know what, with the magic of modern emulation, today may as well be that day. It was time to go to work building a retro gaming station. Got myself a Raspberry Pi kit, put it all together, put a retro gaming operating system on it, compiled lists, hunted ROMs, and then I told my buddy I was doing this and he wanted to see it, so that's why I even started streaming, and thus began the systematic march through gaming history. So here we are, 1,000 games later, all because Horizon Zero Dawn was just a little too boring. Now, I'm coming at this from the perspective of an 80s and 90s kid. I had a couple of friends and some relatives who had Commodore 64s, and back then we all had Apple IIs in elementary school. Now, at least I'm assuming we all did. I mean, I figured if our little white trash town in the middle of Wisconsin had them, then probably everybody did. It wasn't like the Apple commercials either, where they showed the classrooms where everybody had an Apple on their desk. I mean, it wasn't like that at all. We had 1 or 2 computers for every classroom, and so everybody had to take turns playing Oregon Trail and Carmen Sandiego. And it was like a reward. Like if you have your homework done, you can go play on the computer. We didn't get our first home computer until around 1991. It was one of those Radio Shack computers. It's just like saying you went to Walworth's to buy it. Nobody knows what the fuck Radio Shack is anymore. I don't remember what kind we had, but I do remember it had the 3.5-inch floppy drive, so it might have been this one for all I know. That looks pretty close. Up until that time, I was just a console kid. King's Quest V was the first computer game I owned. Then suddenly consoles weren't good enough for me. I was one of those assholes.
I am Queen Isabella, and you have entered my domain now.
But was I wrong, though? I mean, come on, look at this. But I mostly missed out on the early computer era. So that's what I was really interested to dive into. This video is going to be for people who are interested in that kind of thing. There are literally tens of thousands of these old retro games out there. So like, where the fuck do you even start? Well, maybe I can help. So as I go through this, keep in mind that this is entirely a self-indulgent hobby project. I'm looking for games that I want to play, and anything that doesn't really align with that goal is just mainly going to get cut out. And the most prolific genre where that has happened has been text-only interactive fiction games. I don't know if choose your own adventure books are still a thing anymore. Hell, I don't know if books are even still a thing anymore. But choose your own adventure books were all the rage back in the 80s and 90s, and interactive fiction games were kind of the next level choose your own adventures back then. You not only got to choose the path you were going to take, but you got to engage with the world in a way that was supposed to at least feel immersive. The ability to interact with ordinarily boring text was a pretty novel idea back in the early days of home computers, and they were wildly popular, spawning hundreds, if not thousands, of titles. I do remember playing a few of these as a kid. I don't remember which ones, but it wasn't anything that we really ever got into. It was just something we would do to kill a few hours on a Saturday before we got stuck or got bored and moved on to stealing our mom's cigarettes and fighting with the trailer park kids. Now, coming back to these in my 40s, I've realized that these are just more frustrating than they are fun. I tried to get into a couple of them early on, but instead of being the immersive world they're intended to be, most just end up being a guessing game trying to figure out what the parser wants from you in order to proceed. For instance, if I want to take possession of an item, I might try to take the item, or grab the item, or seize it, or grasp it, until finally I fucking give up and look at a walkthrough only to find that it's get. It's get item. Duh. Of course it is. Don't try playing one of these without a thesaurus. I will say that it's interesting to see this evolution of adventure gaming from the primitive text parsers of the early to late 80s to the point and click adventure games that pretty much came to dominate the 90s era of PC gaming. That's been really interesting to see, but as far as the actual gaming part of it goes, these do not stand the test of time in my opinion. You can definitely skip these and not feel like you're missing anything. I also had to cut simulators and battlefield strategy games. Early on, I tried playing through them all, but in order to play any of these games with any level of competence for a stream, you're going to have to invest about 2 hours into each game just learning how to play it. Spending 2 hours on a game that I'm going to spend no more than 10 minutes playing on stream and then never touch it again because I'm just not into these games to begin with, that's a lot of wasted time. If I'm going to waste that time at all, it's going to be wasted on gaming. That's the whole point here. Again, back then, they were awesome. Silent Service is one of the very first computer games I ever played at my cousin's house. They lived in Chicago, so I'd go down there for the summer and stay for a week, and my cousin would get all annoyed because I'd be all into my uncle's Silent Service game instead of playing outside or something. F-19 Stealth Fighter was another one that I played a ton of back in the day on our own computer. So I'm definitely no stranger to simulators. The historical strategy games were pretty new to me. So this is the first time I'm taking a look at these, but these stopped being new after the first one. During the mid-80s, they all looked and played exactly the same way. Whether you're fighting Nazis or the Viet Cong or the Confederates, they all looked like this. Now, to me, this is like the video game equivalent of reading a historical encyclopedia. There's just nothing appealing about this. But if this is something that looks awesome to you, by all means, dive in. It's just not for me. When it comes to sports games, I'll cut most of them out, but I will make exceptions for the odd ones that pop up here and there, like Galactic Games or something fairly unique like Equestrian Show Jumper. Like, what the hell is this? I guess this is how people were hobby horsing back in the day. So anything that looks like it might be goofy or interesting, I'll definitely take a look at. But if it's just baseball, basketball, hockey, or football, I feel like I've seen it all at this point. And by the way, I should say that even though I'm not streaming all these games, I'm still playing them all behind the scenes, at least enough to get gameplay footage of all of them. And I've made a bit of a shocking discovery. I like golf games. Golf. How is that even possible? The dullest outdoor game ever invented and put to video game form. I don't know, there's something oddly soothing and thoughtful about golf games that appeals to something in me. I start getting footage of it and somehow I just get sucked in and suddenly 2 hours is gone. And then educational and kids games I'll mostly skip. Again, there's going to be exceptions here and there, especially when I want to see how much fun it might have been to play this as a kid. Obviously, edutainment games like Agent USA or Carmen Sandiego I'll stream. But pretty much anything Sesame Street or Bingo Bugglebee, I'm not 7 anymore. I can't do this. So with the exception of those genres, these are the games that have stood out most to me from the first 1,000 retro computer games that I've streamed so far. And that's about a year and a half of streaming, covering the years 1985 to 1986. And the first one on the list is a game called 1985. This is one of the first games, if not the first, that I ever streamed. I don't really know. I don't save my VODs. I don't really care. But I knew that with this game that I was going to love this entire process. These graphics are exactly what I remember from the time, but the controls are not what I remember from the time because these controls are so tight. I remember old computer games always having fairly sloppy controls. So playing anything that required great controls was just never that much fun. One of the reasons the consoles came to dominate the gaming industry is because computer games, especially platformers, always suck so much ass. Not this game. These controls are pixel perfect. The challenge here is great. The addictive nature of the game is great. I love everything about this game. 1985, the day after, should be acknowledged as a near perfect retro game. Now, the irony here is that if you played this in 1985, you were probably going to be very unimpressed because it's not exactly stand out for the time. But hey, give it 40 years and go back to it, and now you have a fantastic retro title. The sound effects on these planets are really going to get grating after about 5 seconds, so maybe just listen to some ambient space music while you're playing it. Alcazar the Forgotten Fortress is another one that has that old computer game look that older gamers are going to remember. And this one is a fantastic action-adventure exploration type of game that I really had a lot of fun with. You have to make your way through these smaller fortresses to get to the big one, and along the way you find different weapons to use on different enemies that help you progress through the various fortresses and navigate the pitfalls, literally. This is the first game that I finished on stream while playing it on the easiest difficulty level. It only took about 20 minutes. It's definitely one that I'll go back for a proper playthrough on a higher difficulty setting later. It's very easy to jump into and get the hang of it. This one's a lot of fun. Check it out. Alice in Wonderland was the first really good adventure game that I came across. The UI here is perfect as far as I'm concerned, and the options seem endless. This is far more complex than I was expecting to find for this time period. You have to explore the world, you have to get help from the different characters. A lot of times whether or not they will help you depend on their state of mind, so it's up to you to figure out how to change that state of mind to like calm them down or whatever. There is so many possibilities and so much to do, so much to explore. I would say that this is the first game that I thought felt really and truly immersive. This game is incredible for the time. There was a similar game that they made the year before that I didn't find till later on called Below the Root, based on the book series of the same name. It was made by the same company, Wyndham Classics, and has the exact same kind of look and play style. I only discovered it much later because it came out in 1984, so a year before the games that I started looking at. I've added both of these to my list of games to play through. The Argos Expedition is by far one of the most unique games I have seen ever. Not even just this time period, just ever. Oddly enough, this was made by the Children's Television Workshop, the same people who made Sesame Street. So apparently they were just putting out banger after banger content back in the 80s. Now the problem with this game is that it is 2-player only, and you have to play it this way. So if you don't have friends, then I guess there's always Sesame Street that you could be a loser with. But if you were cool, you could play Argos Expedition. This is also the first one that I actually had to sit down and learn how to play. The YouTube channel Brian's Man Cave was indispensable here. Brian does a great job of going over the game step by step, and that was pretty much the only way I could learn how to play it. Here's the gist. The two players have to cooperate. One person controls the controller, the other person controls the keyboard. You're traveling through space, keeping an eye on your fuel levels and navigating asteroid fields and trying to collect alien artifacts by matching sound frequencies that are given off by the artifacts. And then you review the artifacts and use them for resources. It sounds complicated. It is kind of complicated, but it's pretty simple to learn. But you'll have to watch Brian's Man Cave if you really want to learn this one. Suffice it to say that this game is probably the most unique, unusual game that is going to appear on this video. The old retro computer guys know all about this one, and it's credited with being the first really good atmospheric horror game. You know, back then there were quote-unquote horror games like Friday the 13th and the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but there was nothing eerie about them. They were just kind of like goofy and silly looking. But this one actually has a creepy vibe throughout the game. The music, the scenery, and this one, the sequel, Beyond the Forbidden Forest, this is the first one I played. I didn't know about the first one, and I was immediately impressed by that creepy atmosphere that everybody likes about the first one. I was impressed by the music, by the day-night cycle that you have in this game, the large sprites, the multi-level layout was really interesting, and perhaps the most shocking part of all, the gore. Anytime you're killed, your blood and guts spatter everywhere. This is a work of horror gaming art. You always hear about controversies that came with some of the horror games back then, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on the Atari 2600, and we all remember the Night Trap controversies, but until I played it, I had never even heard of this one. And I really wonder how it kind of slipped under the omniscient radar of 1980s moms who were already caught up in the satanic panic bullshit. With this one, the gameplay takes a little getting used to, but after that, this game is truly a horror classic. Those were the early standout games from the Commodore 64 that I played, but of course at the same time I'm going through Apple II games, and it was on this system that I found games that just blew me away by the sheer scope of the game, like how big it was. And the first one of these was a game called Elite.
Will you become one of the elite? The space
now, this one is well known within the
set
retro
apart by their
community,
total
but
monetary
again, I had never heard of this before until I started playing it. And I gotta say, I really love going into these games not knowing anything, having no expectations whatsoever, and just having my mind blown. It's a massive exploration and space trading simulation game where you can put your capitalistic prowess to the test by buying cheap from one planet and selling high on another planet. The goal being to amass a fortune to outfit your ship with the best weapons and armor that money can buy in order to resist the legions of space pirates that are out there trying to steal your shit. You always start here at Lave or Lave, however you want to say it. I think Lave sounds cooler. So all of this represents one galaxy. There are 8 galaxies and over 250 planets in this game. This game is massive. And the whole point of the game is to achieve elite status. But I don't think there's any real ending to it. I think you just become as rich and powerful as you want, and I get why this is touted as one of the greatest games of all time. Of course, there are ports for DOS and the C64 that look just a little better than this, but it was the Apple II version that introduced me to the game. If you want to get a really good, proper feel for 80s computer gaming, games like this are it. In their native form, it's all keyboard. There's no controllers for this, so you really have to put some time into kind of getting used to everything. But once you do, this is going to be one of the best games you have ever played. The Haley Project is another really expansive space game, again, that was introduced to me on the Apple II. The thing about these space games is that it takes forever to do anything because they're really trying to immerse you in the vast emptiness of space. Like Elite, the purpose here is to rise through the ranks and become the best, and you do this by accomplishing various missions. The first one here is the Raven mission, and if I'm not mistaken, I think the only condition of the mission is to land on Earth. It's been over a year since I played this, but I think that's what it was. And you find your way through the game by navigating a radar screen and using the help of the constellations, which I think is a really cool, unique way of doing this. So the Haley Project and Elite are not the types of games that you just pick up for 10 minutes and play here and there. These games are a commitment. First of all, you have to commit to learning how to play it, and then you have to commit countless hours navigating the cosmos in order to achieve your ultimate goal here. If you're going to play one of these games, you have to commit longer than the average marriage to get anything done. The last of the best Apple II games that I want to point out here is this game Countdown to Shutdown, where you control a group of 8 androids, all of whom have different skill sets and abilities, and you navigate them through a large nuclear facility, collecting items and tools with the purpose of trying to stop this nuclear facility from melting down. You have a limited inventory, you are constantly shuffling items and making sure that the right robot has the right tools to do whatever you're doing in the game. Plus, you're fighting enemies that are trying to stop you, all in order to save this facility. This is another game that I thought was extremely impressive as far as graphics and scope, and of course, in fun. This is one you're definitely going to need to map out and take notes as you play because there's a lot to do and this place is pretty big. This was the first game that had like a really big moment of discovery for me because I didn't know there was a Commodore 64 version of this game. It wasn't on my list, and that's because it came out the year before. And when I found it, I was like, oh, cool. The Commodore 64 has a version of this game that I love. So I started playing that, and immediately I realized like how shit the Apple II was by 1985. These graphics are stunning by comparison. And from a game that was released a year earlier. I had already played a bunch of the Apple II version of Countdown to Shutdown by the time I had seen this one, and seeing this was like looking through the gates of heaven. Now, Gen Xers and older millennials, you'll get this. Remember how, after years and years of playing the Nintendo, how good the Super Nintendo looked when it came out? That moment of awe, that wow, is the same thing that I felt playing the Commodore 64 version of Countdown to Meltdown. So this moment prompted the first big decision. Up to this point, I had already played every Apple II game that was released in 1985, and I was starting to look at the 1986 games. And the thing is, most of them have been mediocre at best, with the obvious exceptions of Elite and the Haley Project. Or else they were just inferior ports of good games that I wouldn't be playing on this system anyway. The game Countdown to Shutdown is peak Apple II. This is the Apple II at its best right here, and even then it wasn't really good enough. So moving ahead, unless there's a title that's exclusive to the Apple II, there is really no reason for me to be playing it anymore. Now, had I started this project with the year 1980 instead of 1985, I'm sure I would have been super impressed by the Apple II compared to other computer systems at the time. But by 1985, it's already just so obsolete. Now, moving back to the premier 1980s computer system, here are 3 more reasons why the Commodore 64 was so fucking good. One of this company's very first games was this one right here, Rescue on Fractalus. They really came out of the gate white hot with this one. Here you're navigating your space fighter around the surface of an alien planet to rescue other pilots. You do this by landing, turning off your ship, and turning off the shield so that the pilot can get on board. He runs up to the ship, he knocks, and that's when you know to open the airlock and let him in. But sometimes it's not the pilot you think you're saving. If you don't know what that means, let me just say that this is the first game I've ever played that had a legit jump scare in it. Lucasfilm makes this amazingly simple space game, but it still takes a minute to learn the controls and the keyboard commands. There's not a lot of them. It's super easy to get going, but you gotta get good as the difficulty ramps up with each new level. Then there's the Eidolon. It's a 3D dungeon crawler, and you're exploring these caverns with your magic-powered ship called an Eidolon. You collect these jewels, which allow you to pass through the barriers to move on to the next level, all the while fighting your way through an array of pretty cool-looking enemies. And as with Rescue on Fractalus, super simple to get the hang of, very impressive graphics, and really fun to play. The Coronis Rift is probably my favorite of these three. Another 3D game where you're wandering around an alien world scavenging for old alien tech that's just lying around in these things called hulks. You use this tech to beef up your ship's weapons and armor, and you can get energy from them or sell them. You gotta be kind of strategic in how you utilize this tech. So while you're trying to get your loot, these aliens are attacking and harassing you constantly. And part of the game is ultimately to find and destroy the alien base. Once you loot all your stuff, you go back to the ship where Robo Bro here analyzes it and helps you decide what to keep and what to toss. The thing that I raved about on stream while playing this was how the background gradually fades into view as you get closer. I had never seen that in a game up to this point. And after looking it up later, found out that this was actually a huge advancement for the time. So kudos to Lucasfilm Games for that, too. But I'm bringing up these Lucasfilm space games not just to rave about them, but also to contrast them with the more complex space games that we just looked at on the Apple II. So even if the games like Elite or the Haley Project seem a little slow for you, the Lucasfilm games are brighter, they're prettier, and they're easier to learn, and they don't let up on the action. These three games that I'm showing here represent three of the very first four that Lucasfilms released. They are all perfect masterpieces as far as I'm concerned. This is absolute gold. I had never heard of any of these before doing this, and this is why I'm doing this exactly for these games. And going through this, I'm really kind of keeping my eye open for RPGs, since that is one of my favorite genres, but the earliest RPG I'd ever played was Dragon Warrior on the Nintendo. And I'm just really curious to see how they look and how they play on old computer systems. I don't think I have to spend a ton of time talking about certain RPG classics. I think anybody who's a fan of the genre is going to almost certainly be familiar with titles like Ultima, The Bard's Tale, Might and Magic. I think they're all great for sure, but I got exactly what I expected from them. There wasn't really anything new as far as how they looked or how they played. I will say that I was caught off guard for how much you need to prepare for playing these games. There are two rules that you really need to know if you're going to try exploring these games on your own. Rule number one, read the manual. I'm not kidding. That is not a suggestion. That is a requirement to play these old games. You will get nowhere if you do not read the manual first. There is no hand-holding with these old RPGs. When I first started playing Bard's Tale, I wandered aimlessly for the first 10 hours or so, which is fine because getting started in this game is the most fucking brutal RPG to get going in that I've ever played before. All the grinding and the leveling up certainly helped, but it wasn't until I sat down and read the manual that I knew what to do. Within the manual, there's a tiny little hint about going to one of the taverns. From there, the entire game opens up to you and you can finally get going, but you gotta read the manual first. Rule number two, keep a notebook handy. You are gonna have to take a ton of notes in order to figure out what to do and where to go. This is especially true of Ultima 4. Playing through this, I'm constantly getting barraged with hints and advice, and if I am not tracking them, I just know this is going to come back and bite me in the ass at a key moment. With all of these games, you're meant to take your time and be patient and just allow yourself to be entirely immersed in the worlds. That said, here's a handful of old RPGs that I had never heard of before. I don't want to mention them necessarily because they're good, but because I know there's a lot of RPG fans out there who just want this information. And we'll start off right away with one of the biggest names in retro computer gaming at this time, Sierra Online. By the time they released Wrath of Denethanor, they were already well known for their adventure games. But here they also decided to dip into the RPG space. First of all, let's take a moment to appreciate the struggle of computer gamers in 1986. If you start swapping these discs in 1986, you could probably play the game by early 1987. Anyway, once it gets going, you find that it's a pretty good looking Ultima clone. Some of the standout differences here are its day-night cycle, and apparently you have the ability to kill townsfolks and have a bounty put on your head. I didn't do that when I played it, but that's an option for you. And the main thing separating it from other RPGs at the time is that there's no initial character development at all before the game starts. Usually you get to pick your class and your race and play around with the attributes a little bit, but not here. You get to name your character and then the game gives you a bag of gold and that's it. You're on your own from there. But whatever, it plays great. If you like Ultima, you'll probably get into this one. I put Sisyphus in here for those of you who have a taste for slow, clunky, barely passable early RPGs. This is the one you want to play. Most of the tactical aspects are stripped entirely from this one. It's very basic gameplay-wise and graphically, as you can see. You have a party of 4 traversing the land, trying to hunt down a demon lord. Typical RPG stuff. The movement is so slow. The leveling up is so slow. There is no grinding that you can even do in this game. Once you've destroyed a group of monsters, they stay dead. And I actually like that. I think that's pretty cool, but that doesn't help if you're trying to gain experience. And even the battles themselves are so slow because 50% of the game is player and enemy attacks just missing each other for whatever reason. This might be the first RPG that I've ever played that is a grind to play just in and of itself without doing any grinding. The game itself is a grind. Use your save states very liberally in this game because once your guys are dead, they stay dead. There's no bringing them back. And even in the very beginning of the game, you're warned that you need certain characters in order to finish the game. Now, frankly, I'm not a big fan of this at all. It really limits the replay value here, but I don't know. I'm working on giving this one a full playthrough just because I'm a fan of the genre. All I can say about this game is, well, a warning, really, that unless you are really, really into RPGs, if you're just a casual player, you're going to tap out of this one even before the end of the first scenario, probably because of how slow and kind of boring it is. So while the last two games were more Ultima-like, this one is more Bard's Tale or Might and Magic-like. Alternate Reality was intended for a larger series that was never finished. So this one's called Alternate Reality: The City, which was the first one, and this was followed up by Alternate Reality: The Dungeon. They got both of those done. They never continued the series after that for whatever reason. So getting into this right off the bat, you have to know that you're not going anywhere with this game. You're supposed to play through this one to get toughened up for the dungeon, and then play the dungeon to get toughened up for whatever the next one was supposed to be. But other than that, there's no real goal here. There's no evil wizard to fight. There's nothing except the city to explore, and you just sort of meander and do some quests building yourself up. But like I said, you're not going to go anywhere. And also, this one is really hard to get going in too. Sort of like the Bard's Tale is. I enjoy this game as an RPG. I mean, the gameplay mechanics and the graphics are all great, but there is no happy ending with this. There's no princess to save. There's no universe to save. This is really just the RPG version of edging. All right, and I guess I should talk about this one. This is a French game called Mandragore, and this stands out as being the first retro computer RPG I found that I really don't have much interest in playing. French people, right? Now, if I'm willing to put up with the bullshit of Sisyphus and not this one, then that means Mandragore is one hot steaming pile of shit. This one is rough. Beginning with the very obvious, the graphics. This looks like bad children's art that a mom hangs up on her fridge. I mean, it's colorful, I guess, but You don't even really know what you're looking at half the time. The little stick people of Sifus were a huge graphical upgrade compared to this mess. The interface and keyboard commands here are annoying and overly complicated, and the character stats don't really make any sense. You have life here, but it seems to deplete with every action that you take, so you can't really plan around keeping your characters alive, counting on the fact that they're going to lose life during enemy attacks. You don't know when they're going to lose life. You could just be entering an area and suddenly you just lose 3 life points. I do like that you can interact with your surroundings. They appear in the box that displays all of your enemies, but I don't like that most of the time the objects seem to appear to not have any real purpose other than to appear in the box. This is just one sloppy mess of a game with very ambiguous instructions. I've never really seen anything like this. I'm really just throwing this out there as a great example of what not to do with an RPG. I don't know that I've given up completely on this, but my initial impressions of this game are not good at all. Like I said about Sifus, if you're not a huge RPG fan, you can skip it. But with this game, I'm saying even if you are a huge RPG fan, you can probably just skip this one. Well, I'm off to the Philippines for a couple of weeks, so I'm going to have to finish this video up later. I'll do a part 2 talking about DOS and the 16-bit systems. But if you liked the video, give it a like. If you really liked it, give it a sub, and leave a comment down below to let me know where I can find the hottest ladyboys in Manila. Later.